Hello and welcome to the PS&B podcast. This month we are joined by Simon Caplin, our head of auctions.
Welcome, Simon. Thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about career in auctions with us?
I started auctions 10 years ago this year. It was really strange how it all started. I was very friendly with the former auctioneer here. I was having lunch with him on a Friday and he called me and he said, I can't make lunch tomorrow, I'm leaving. I said, gosh, okay, wasn't expecting that. He said, but the partners here have wondered whether or not you'd be interested in taking over. I came for an interview, literally, and that was that. I was offered the job and I was delighted to accept it. It's a very strange way to start my career as an auctioneer.
Did you have a plan to be an auctioneer?
No, not in the slightest.
Okay.
No. I mean, I started in the estate agency in 1982 when I was 18. So I've always done estate agency. So I suspect it was just a natural migration into becoming the next level of a more professional side of the business, which appealed to me. So yeah, the strangest of ways, but very fortuitous. I expect I was in the right place at the right time.
And it was meant to be?
I think so, yes.
Fate. So if we get into some questions, which I've thought about to test you beforehand, what has been your favourite moment working as an auctioneer?
It had to be a flat we were selling in Bognor Regis on the seafront, and my client was really up against it and she had to sell. There was a certain figure she had to achieve to pay off debts, and anything above that figure was for the rest of her life living. And it was a hard property to sell. We didn't have a huge amount of interest in it, but then as the auction day got closer, two people popped up and registered to bid. We sold it for I remember it so clearly, it was £35,000 above the reserve. So not only were her debts fully paid off, but she had a small pot. And for me, that just meant everything because it made such a difference to her life.
For her, it was life-changing.
Yeah, it was. And so that's probably my favourite moment because that lady put her trust in us 100%. And yes, we could have just sold it for the reserve, but the fact we got another £35,000, it made her life acceptable. She could be happy and move on. So
and that's part of your role, actually, is it's not just about selling property at auction, is it?
No, it's not.
It's about providing the best service to people and getting the absolute best that you can for them.
You have to invest in your clients' requirements and really understand their needs. And if you do that, chances are you're going to get a better price. And that just showed me that we left no stone unturned. We tried really, really hard to get as much as we could. The difference it made to one person, that was worth everything. Yeah. So that's probably my favourite.
And what has been the most challenging part of your role?
So this is consistent and ongoing. It's always a sale by auction in the UK. All completed transactions at land registry, only 2% are undertaken via a sale by auction. So for us, the hardest thing is always going to be getting the stock for each auction. So you have your auction, you sell what you've got, and then you've immediately got to rebuild for the next one. Yeah. And that's always the challenge, is getting the properties in time so we can populate the up and coming auction. We've always managed to do it. How, I don't know, but that's the hardest part without any doubt. And I think any auctioneer, unless you're one of the major London auction houses, I think any locally owned independent auctioneer will say the same thing. It's getting the stock in time so you can hold your auction and have it successful. And that will always be the case. That's never going to change.
Would you say that the public perception of auctions is still that auctions, it's a last resort?
Some people,
rather than an actual way of selling a property.
Look, some people do actually say that to me. Oh, it's a last resort.
You won't get the best price.
You won't get the best price. What's actually helped massively is Homes Under the Hammer. I do honestly think that because it's in people's houses and they see on their television screens what can sell and the prices that are achieved. And honestly, if you take any stereotypical property that's suitable for auction, it's not just your old-fashioned house that's falling down anymore.
Or those that won't sell any other way.
It facilitates so many types of properties. and the price that is achieved often can exceed market value. So we have to educate clients and say, well, no, it's not like that anymore. It's actually a much more modern approach. There's more money available now for buyers. So you've got the bank of mum and dad. You've got bridging facilities. You've got buy-to-let mortgages. All of these are achievable to allow someone to go to an auction and bid for a property. I think, therefore, it is all about education. Mm-hmm. Yes, people do have this concept, but it's wrong. It's a very efficient way for buyers and sellers to sell their properties. And I just think that it's up to us, as I use that word again, to educate people and help them understand how it's a very efficient, stress-less way of selling a property.
Mm. And one of the ways to demonstrate that is to have successful auctions, good sale prices, and then for us to spread that word, isn't it?
Yeah, the key is for buyers to understand that the auction room is a one-off. If you think about it, it's the only place where you're saying to people, right, you can actively bid against each other. You're allowed to do that. And that's what the auction room does. You have the buzz, you have the adrenaline, you have two people determined to buy one property. And, you know, heart rules head. And the amount of people I've spoken to after an auction who've assured me they won't pay more than X, and they comfortably pay Y. I say, what happened? We got a bit carried away. We could see other people were interested, but we really wanted the house. We're happy with it. Yes, we paid more than we ever wanted to, but we've got it. And we've got it today. It's ours. We've just exchanged contracts on it.
Yeah, you haven't got all this waiting as a sale by private treaty, which can drag on for months until you even exchange and know that the property is actually yours.
Because the minute that gavel comes down and hits its landing pad, that is a legally binding exchange of contracts. So the seller knows they've got a guaranteed sale with the 10% deposit paid there and then. The buyer knows they've bought the property and the seller can't change their mind. But more importantly, there's no wriggle room. The price can't change. That's the price. It's set in stone. So I think it's a very efficient way, and it works.
What's the most important personality trait or strength that you think is needed to be an auctioneer?
This one's easy. You have to be honest. You have to have integrity. You have to be impartial. You have to remember you act for your client. But you have to gain the trust of the buyer and the seller. You have to come across as being knowledgeable and understanding. And you've got to be able to answer a question on a legal pack if it's asked. Because if you can't, you just come across as, well, you're the auctioneer, why don't you know that answer? You lose integrity. So I think it's very, very important to make sure that all the legal packs are read when they come in. So if a question comes in, you can answer it clearly and precisely. But you always say the same caveat to the buyer. I can tell you this is just my opinion, but you must have your solicitor check it out because they're acting for you, not me. And I think if you can always remember, you act for your seller, but be as helpful as you possibly can to a buyer. Make them feel they're important, make them feel like their questions are being answered honestly.
Which they are. When you say make them feel, that is actually what we're doing, isn't it? Is we are answering questions honestly, and they are important to us. Yep.
And if you can actually say to a buyer, right, there is a problem here with this property. However, this is how I think the problem can be resolved. But you must make your own inquiries as to satisfying yourself. But I'm not giving you unbiased advice. So have your solicitor check it out. But if you can let them believe that you are genuinely trying to help, and if they have any further questions on that point, that they're welcome to come back to you and you'll ask your client solicitor to answer, you'll get that person in the room bidding because they will feel comfortable that they've been looked after, that you're taking them seriously and you're not trying to give them any old nonsense about, oh yeah, it'll be fine. Be precise. If there's a problem, say, look, this is a nasty problem, but it is this price. That's the reason why. And I think if you're like that, buyers will buy into you because too many people are told too many things that they are wanting to hear rather than the truth. Just be honest with them. But above all, for an auctioneer, I think you've got to have a sense of humour.
Yes.
Because when you stand up on the rostrum and you've got everybody looking at you and you're trying to sell a property, you do have to have a sense of humour, and don't take yourself too seriously.
No.
That's the other thing.
If you fall over your words, which I know has happened.
Oh, yes.
I've been in the room when it's happened.
Yep.
And if you make light of it, then the whole room makes light of it. And it's not unprofessional, it's human.
It is. I remember once, and I know the one you're referring to, because I lost the bidding. And what had happened was I was doing my bidding, and then someone from the audience threw a curveball at me. They asked a really random question. So I answered the question. But of course, by the time I finished answering it, I'd forgotten where I was. Luckily, my colleague writes the bids down.
Yeah.
So I was just able to look over and see where the last bid was. But I did actually say, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, just give me a moment. I think I've lost the bid here. I just need to check what it was.
But everybody found that funny, didn't they? And it just lightened the atmosphere, because it can be quite an intimidating place, would be fair to say, or some auctions can be.
I think, I remember as a young, well, I was probably 20 at the time, I went to bid for a property for a client in London at an auction. He asked me to do it for him because he couldn't come down. And I remember going to the auction room and my heart was pounding. I was so nervous. I didn't know when to bid, I didn't know when to come in. I'd never done it before. I could just remember how I felt, and actually that has done me in really good stead, because I always try and think, well, how are the audience here feeling?
Yes.
You know, it's not something you do every day of the week.
No.
So you've got these people sitting there really nervous, not sure quite what to do. And I think if they think that we're not too serious, that it's a nice relaxed environment.
Yeah.
And what I always do before an auction, everybody that's got a bidding paddle in their hand, I'll go and talk to them.
Yeah.
And I'll say, look, hello, I'm Simon, I'm the auctioneer. Do you have any last minute questions? Are you going to be sitting here so I know where you are? And would you like to know how to bid, when to come into anything I can do just to help you? And I think people like that a lot, because it makes us human, and we're not being stuffy or austere. We're just being friendly and helpful. And I think that's the image now we have to portray as auctioneers.
Yes.
It's a nice, friendly, relaxed environment. Yes, it's very serious because legally binding contracts are going to be executed.
The stakes are high.
But let's make the experience enjoyable for them.
Yeah.
Let them leave, and when they're how was it? Actually, do you know what? I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Whether they got the property or not, it was they were really good. They were ever so helpful.
And if they have a good experience, they're more likely to go to the next auction or the auction after that, if they see a property that might be suitable for them. And your support team is important as well, isn't it? That
our support team are fantastic.
To have your guys available to speak to those that, not only those that are bidding, but those that are just attending as well. You know, just as spectators, so to speak. Just to talk to those people and engage with them and explain what the process is, so that they may feel more comfortable in the future actually holding a paddle to make a bid on something.
We have quite a few people phone us before the auction. So, is it all right to come along and watch? Of course it is. I said, look, come along. One of our team will be at the door anyway. Just say you're here to watch. We'll sit you down, give you a brochure and answer any questions that you might have. It's just, I'm thinking of buying a property in 2 or 3 months' time when I've got some money coming in. Yeah. We just wondered how the auctions work. And I said, you know, that's a really good idea. Because rather than come along for the first time and bid, come to the next 2 auctions, have a coffee, sit down, watch proceedings, you have a better of idea of how it's going to work. And I think a lot of people like to do that, and we're very happy to have them.
And it's better for us to have a full room.
Oh, well,
anyway,
of
because the atmosphere is better, it's more lively.
And the other thing I've noticed is that some people will witness a property selling for quite a bit more than we thought it was going to sell for.
And that's where your future lots may come from.
Exactly, because people come up to me afterwards and say, that went for good money, didn't it? Yeah, well, it did, and this is the reason why. We've got something quite similar. Could you come and have a look at it for us? Because, once again, there's no environment like an auction room. It's where, some people say it's where magic can happen. Of course it's not magic. It's just that people get caught up with the process. They get caught up with bidding. And if one person's bidding against you, well, they're actually reinforcing that they think the property's worth more than you do. You then think, well, somebody else thinks it's worth more than I do, so we're going to bid a bit more. And that only has to happen half a dozen times in bids of £5,000.
Yeah.
You know, you could have another £30,000. That's how it works. So it's all about, again, people coming along, seeing that happening. Well, perhaps we'll give our property a go, because they won't get that price anywhere else. It's quite fascinating.
So we offer in-person auctions, so by that we mean in the room. I think you've probably just explained why an in-the-room auction is better than an online auction. Obviously with COVID we had to move a lot of our services to online because we couldn't meet people in person. And I know that online is still an option for a lot of businesses, but what are your thoughts on in-person versus online?
After COVID, when we had to do the online platform, I did a bit of research and I looked at the prices achieved online compared to prices achieved in an auction room, or pre-auction sales for that matter. And I worked out that the in-room sales were 15% higher than their online.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that. In an auction room, as I've just mentioned, you have this adrenaline-fueled buzz, the energy. Now, a good auctioneer will be able to quickly identify who the buyers are in the room. And I'll give you an example. When we start, say you have a property and it has a reserve of 300,000, I think probably typically we'd start off with £5,000 bids. So let's just say we got to the reserve, 300,000, and one person's dropped out. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I hit the reserve, but I think this is worth more. So what we then do is we've got to get that bidding re-engaged. So what we do is we can drop that £5,000, say, right, okay, who wants giving 2.5 then? Let's call it 2.5. 2.5? No? Okay, £1,000. £1,000. Come on, give me £1,000, otherwise you're going to regret this in the morning. £1,000. Now, if that person comes back in at £1,000, you've kick-started the auction, and then the other person will come back in at £1,000. Yes, you've dropped it to £1,000, but again,
still
if 10 to 20 bids come in, 10 to 20 bids come in, you've got another 10 to 20.
And you can't do that online.
You can't do it online, and that is the crucial thing. There is no atmosphere, there's no adrenaline, and the auctioneer cannot and is unable to assist proceedings to benefit the seller. And the classic example for me, and I'll always say this if anybody wants to know, is we had a house, you may remember because you were there, it was in the big auction room that we had. It was quite a packed auction because we had quite a lot of properties to offer. Had a house in Worthing and the reserve was 350. And I was a bit worried that we might not hit 350. So I said to the client, could you come along to the auction? I need you to be there because I may have to ask you a question. Anyway, we got to 345 and I could not get a penny more. I tried really hard. I think I even went down to bids of 500, but no one was bidding. And I thought, right, I'm 5,000 below the reserve. I can't sell this house. I left the rostrum, I stepped into the audience and I said to my client, look, I've got 345. What would you like to do? You don't have to take it, but if you do, we can sell it now. It's up to you. He said to just sell it. So we sold it for 345. Now, in an online auction, that doesn't happen.
No.
People always say to me, but you can go back to them afterwards. Yes, you can, but there's a really important word with auctions. It's called momentum. The minute you lose momentum, some people, they might think, oh, thank God I didn't get that. It was way more than I wanted to. And they're lost for good. You'll never get them back. You have to have that momentum. So if you're able to leave the platform, to go and ask a client, well, that person's bid is still live and binding, and they say yes, the house is sold. And I think that's the hugest difference. It makes all the difference in the world because online, you can't do that because your client's not there. You don't know the buyer. You can't read their body language. For me, if you ask for a bid and a buyer puts their hand up really quickly like that, they're keen. And you spot that and you think, okay, well, I think this person's really keen. If that's an online platform, I have no idea who's bidding.
And I think our business generally, which is property, sort of the umbrella term would be property for us, is the people business.
It's a people business.
And it's not a people business if you're behind a screen.
No.
So you have to be face to face with the people that you're dealing with to get the best. Okay, Simon, we're going to move away from business questions now, and we're going to move to questions from some of your colleagues.
Aha.
The first one being, what is something that most people in the business won't know about you?
This is really boring. I'm really into horology.
Oh.
I love old clocks and watches,
Okay.
particularly period ones. I love to understand how the movements work, and as I say, I need to get out more, but it's just always fascinated me. I'm always reading up about it and
Okay.
going to shows.
Do you
and
collect
things.
them?
No, I don't collect them. I can't afford to, but I love. I go to watch shows with my brother, clock shows, and always looking at podcasts, and I just find the whole thing really fascinating. I just love the look of the 1950s watches and clocks. It's just something I've always been interested in. I have no idea why. It just fascinates. Secret passion, if you like.
Not so secret anymore.
No, not secret anymore.
So the next question from a colleague would be, what's something you're passionate about? So that would be
Yeah, that's
similar?
so. For my sins, and my colleague Adrian reminds me of this every day. I'm a West Ham United season ticket holder. Have been for many years. I go to all the home games, and I've supported them since I was 7.
So
that's
who does Adrian support?
Adrian's a Brighton fan.
Okay.
He reminds me of that each day, because at the moment they're doing better than we are.
What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Oh, that was by my dad when I was about 18, when I left college. And I got a job. It was actually with Legal & General Insurance when they were in Montefiore Road. And he said to me, if you look after your job, treat it seriously and respectfully, your job will look after you. I've always remembered that. And I always thought that was probably the best advice I was given.
And you've proved him right.
Yeah, sadly I lost him many years ago, but I'd like him to know that I've always had that in the back of my head, and I've always taken every job that I've had really seriously and given it everything I've got. If you wake up in the morning and you don't feel 100%, go into work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, go into work,
Yeah.
fight it, give 100%.
And most times you'll actually feel better.
Yeah, I think you do, and let's face it, if you have a couple of days off unexpectedly, you're only going to pay for it when you do go, and the amount of emails that build up and phone calls, etc. Sometimes you just feel better if you plough through it.
Just to clarify that we are talking about here if you just feel a little bit under the weather or a little bit off colour, not obviously if you're genuinely ill, but I think all of us would say that we have the days where we get out of bed and think, oh, I'm just really not in the frame of mind today, push through it, and within a few minutes of being at work with your colleagues or getting stuck into a project, you've forgotten that you weren't in the right frame of mind because you're in the zone.
Yeah, and also, you know, or maybe we're just very lucky here with the colleagues that we have, but it's, you know, it's like going to work to see friends, and then those friends will, I don't know, I mean, even Adrian will make me a cup of tea if I'm feeling a bit ropey.
Yeah, and they'll pull you along and
They
pull
will.
you up. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, we work hard, and yes, we have to achieve certain goals, but the environment in which we work, it's very, very fortunate to have that here.
Yeah,
So you
I
never
agree.
feel like, oh, I'm going to work. I'm going to work, so that's great. I think that's important.
Yeah, I do too. Do you have a favourite childhood memory?
I do actually. It's going back
One
to...
that you can share.
Well, I'm going back to football again. So I think it was in 1978, I think it was, West Ham got relegated from the old First Division to the Second Division, and I'd never seen them play before live, ever. And Brighton were in the Champion Division 2, so West Ham got to play Brighton at the Goldstone Ground. And I remember going along with my mate from school in the Brighton end, but I actually got to see West Ham play for the very first time, and I think that's probably my most memorable childhood memory, because I was so excited. I couldn't actually believe, after all those years, I was actually going to see my team play in the flesh. And I think we won. I'm pretty sure we did.
Didn't stick in your memory that well
No,
then,
it
did
no.
it? If you can't remember the
I
result.
think it was 2-0 or something. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure we won.
And in those days, it wasn't an easy thing to travel to a football match, was it? Back in the 70s, going to concerts, football matches, it just wasn't the done thing. Now we don't think twice about it, do we?
I'll be honest with you, I wasn't always allowed to go to the football because, back then it was completely different how it is now. My mum and dad were always a bit worried that if I did go to the football, could a fight break out, could something happen? Because it used to happen regularly. Away games were absolutely out of the question. I don't think I went to an away game until I left home when I was 20. But no, it was very, very hard. Travel was difficult, violence was high. And
cost of the tickets, relatively, was expensive.
So I remember the cost of that ticket for that game was 50p. But I had to save my pocket money, which I think was 10p a week. And I had to save up so I could buy a ticket. Yeah. So you look back now and you think, oh, it was 50p. That was a lot of money then.
It was.
And I had to, as I say, I had to save my pocket money so I could buy a ticket for the game.
Yeah.
That's how different it was.
Those were the days.
Those were the days.
Oh, what did you want to be when you were a child? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I want to be a professional cricketer.
Oh. But cricket's not your passion now.
It is. I love watching cricket. I used to play cricket. I played league cricket for many years. West Ham are my passion, but I absolutely love watching and playing cricket. I haven't played cricket for a few years now, due to my back issues. But no, I always wanted to be a professional cricketer. Nowhere near good enough. Nowhere near good enough. But that's what I would have loved to have done.
And here you are, an auctioneer.
Absolutely.
Final question. If you could have coffee with a historical figure or figures, who would they be?
Can I have two? One, Margaret Thatcher. Not because I have any political persuasion one way or another. It's just that I love to understand her mental toughness and how she was able to have that self-belief when she made a decision and no one was going to change her mind. Just that drive, that mental toughness.
The Iron Lady.
The Iron Lady, of how she could have that faith and confidence in any decision that she made.
Unlike politicians nowadays.
Yeah. So it's not from any political standpoint, it's purely, I just admired that mental toughness that she had.
Be it right or wrong.
Yeah.
It was how she got through really difficult situations and was just absolutely convinced her way was the right way.
Second one, a bit random. That would be our founding member, Joseph Parsons, who started in 1825 as an auctioneer. And I would love to understand how he would have conducted his auctions nearly 200 years ago without any modern technology compared to what we do today. I mean, there was no Rightmove, there was no internet, there was probably no fax machines, there was probably maybe a telephone at that point. And I would love to know how he conducted his auctions, what was at his disposal, and just compare the two.
And how much were things selling for then as well?
Yeah, and that's exactly right.
So we still have his gavel, don't we?
We do.
From 1825.
So we have his gavel. It's an ivory finger gavel. So you basically pop it in between your fingers like that. There's no handle on it. It's solid ivory. And in fact, you may remember I used it at our 1,000th auction in 2018. We had our 1,000th auction and we made a commemorative brochure. Our auction brochure was a commemorative brochure with Joseph's picture on, and as a mark of respect to him, we used that finger gavel, that ivory on. We still got it. It's got an inscription on it as well. It's nearly 200 years old. Fabulous. So there, I would like to meet him just to understand what sort of prices he achieved, how he did his auctions, and just the difference between then and today, because 200 years almost is a long time. Yeah. Things change a lot, so I'd find that fascinating.
It would be nice to go back in time, wouldn't it?
It would.
Be a fly on the wall.
It would. It would.
Thank you, Simon,
Pleasure.
for your time. It's been very interesting.
Pleasure.
I hope you've enjoyed our podcast, and we will be back here with a member of our team.